Hey guys, Meredith here with Madam Diesel. Today, we're going to work on the Yanmar. We're going to fire it up for the first time. Everything on the overhaul is complete, and I'm excited to run this thing for the first time, double check my oil pressure and all that, and, see how she sounds for the first time after being torn apart. So I'm going to take you guys along for the ride, and we'll see how it goes. Now, one of the questions I get about running these engines in the shop, you guys may or may not have seen a couple videos of me doing this after rebuilds, and some of you have asked, how come you don't hook it up to water and run it for a longer period of time? And I could, and I've thought about it. However, after a fresh rebuild, I really need to load this engine up. I need to essentially have it hooked to a prop shaft and prop to be able to put a load on it to be able to test it properly. So yes, I could run it for longer, but I'm unable to put a load on it. I don't have a dyno here at the shop. I wish I did, but that's why, I go through, get it started for the first time, make sure we have critical things like oil pressure and that it sounds good, and, that nothing like terrible is wrong, so it's at least worth installing in the boat. And then once it's in the boat, that's when we'll start, the real break-in process. We'll be able to put a load on it by turning the prop shaft at the dock. We can run it for a long time without, overheating or anything. So for here, really all I want to double check is, my pressures, how it sounds, make sure it doesn't like throw a rod, that sort of thing. And then once it gets to the boat, now we can actually, test it out, make sure it's good. Of course, if anything went wrong once we put a load on it, it would be on me to pull it back out. I just can't really find a good way to load it up here at the shop. And so that's why I do the process the way I do. So far, it's been good. I have actually looked into figuring out some sort of portable dyno setup. If you guys know anything about any of those, let me know if that's even a thing. But I can't have like the whole dyno room quite yet. And so until then, I'm kind of limited in what I can do. And so this is how I verify that we're at least good to go to the effort of installing it on the boat. And then once it's on the boat, we can really work it and make sure it's all set up and ready to go. All right, let's get our battery and cables set up. I'm gonna hook up the starter and my remote switch so it's easy to start, easy to crank. And then we'll work on securing it to an actual frame on the table so this thing doesn't rattle itself off the table. For those of you curious, the positive, we're just hooking up directly to the solenoid, and then the negative actually has a bolt where the harness is secured, and I'll zoom in and show you these locations because this is where the boat would actually be hooked up as well. All right, here we go. This is our designated ground, and the positive is right on our big post on the solenoid here. I removed the hot wire for the panel because we're not using the panel right now, but normally that would be hooked up with the heavy cable as well. The next thing we need to do is we need to hook up an oil pressure gauge. This engine has never had oil run through it since the overhaul. So all of my oil galleries are dry. The oil pump is, dry, short of assembly lube and stuff like that. So we're going to remove our oil pressure switch here. And this is just an on-off switch. This is for the dummy light. This is not a sending unit. It would not read to a gauge. And it just unscrews and we'll screw in our gauge in its place for testing. Now, of course, with any rebuild, we have a fresh filter. I have fresh oil in the engine. And once I crank it, I will be topping off my oil because once those galleries fill up, my oil level is going to drop. So I'm going to get this switch out of the way, get the gauge put on, crank it for a bit, and then top off my oil. Now I'm going to crank it and watch how long it takes to actually build the oil pressure. It's pumping oil through all the galleries, and once it makes it all the way through all the galleries, now I've got oil pressure, and I've got good oil pressure, so we're good to go. Now that this engine is ready to run, I want to put it on its motor mounts and actually set it up on, I have a small frame on wheels that I can secure to the table. So that way the engine doesn't try to move off the table. Just makes it a little bit more secure. These particular motor mounts are Yanmar OEM, and they are particularly soft. So they have a little bit more vibration at idle than some people like. I personally run Isoflex. There are aftermarket mounts that are better than these, but these are just fine, so don't be afraid to use them if that's what you can get. My biggest complaint about these motor mounts is the rubber polymer that they use is not oil resistant, and it's not super corrosion resistant metal. I don't know if it's just mild steel or what, but if they get dripped on or something like that, they tend to delaminate and get rusty. Now it's time for the fun part. Let's get some diesel hooked up. I finally set up my cart with a 12-volt fuel pump, so no more blowing in the tank like some of you guys have seen in previous videos. It's going to be so nice. I'm really excited. We'll get this thing primed, and then she should be ready to start. For those of you asking how to prime one of these engines, I'm going to walk you through it. I'm currently priming the low pressure side of the fuel system. So that consists of the filters, everything from the tank to the injection pump. So the secondary fuel filter that's on this engine has a small 10 millimeter. That's what I'm working on now. And all I'm going to do is crack that loose. And then once that's loose, I'm going to turn on my fuel pump. Or if you don't have an electric fuel pump, then you'll use the hand pump that's actually on the engine. This particular engine had a ton of water and rust in the fuel system, so I replaced everything. We had the injection pump rebuilt, the injectors rebuilt. So I'm really hoping I didn't forget anything, because I don't want to contaminate this fresh system and screw anything up, but I think I did pretty good. Ah, that's so nice. Don't ask me why it took me so long to set that stupid card up, but it is well worth it. As my 12-volt pump is running, I'm watching that 10 millimeter screw to make sure there's air and eventually fuel coming out, and it looks like I've actually got a leak up above at my other 10 millimeter on the injection pump, so we need to fix that first. Oh, Yanmar, you managed to stuff these screws into the tightest of places. There's always a hose, like right in front. Alright, so here's the little bleed screw and its copper crush washer. We're going to replace that washer with a new one. I have a rubberized one that will probably seal a little bit better. The head of the screw is a little corroded, but not so bad that you can't get a wrench on it. Here we go. Let's put this back together and see if that still leaks. Almost there. Maybe. Maybe. Oh, I think we did it. One thread at a time, baby. Success! Yay! Now, these screws tend to be a problem because people have a tendency to over tighten them, so be very gentle on every single one of these bleed screws. You do not need to crank them. You will strip them out if you go any farther than you think, so just finger tight. That's all you need. Let's try it again. I'm going to re-crack my first 10mm and make sure that filter fills up with diesel. And once we're full there, then I can move through the rest of the circuit. And she's tight. So I'm going to turn on my pump here real quick. And you should see diesel coming out right about now. And I'll just make sure I have a solid kind of flow of diesel. And then I'll tighten this thing back up and our filter is bled. Don't forget to clean up your mess. We aren't animals here. Now that the low pressure side of the fuel system is bled, I'm going to crack the injector supply lines on all three injectors. And this is the high pressure side. And so we're talking about 1500 psi or so when the engine's actually running. And this requires cranking the engine a little bit to get diesel at all three. And once you see diesel, then you can close them up and the engine should want to start. Final step, I gotta get these belts off. The alternator is currently not hooked up to a battery, and so I don't want to blow the diodes in it by running the engine. And so we're going to take the alternator belt off, and then we're going to take the raw water pump belt off as well, because I don't want to run my brand new impeller dry. The engine's not going to be running long enough to overheat or anything. If and when the engine starts, I'm going to want to get the idle set and adjusted. And so I'm sticking on a piece of reflective tape so my little tachometer, my handheld tachometer, can read it while the engine's running. Time for some cranking, and I'm watching for fuel at all three of those injectors. Once I have fuel, then I can close them. All right, we got fuel at all three injectors. Let's get them closed up. I'm gonna do a couple final things here. Just make sure my engine strap is nice and tight so this thing doesn't walk off the table. And then I'm gonna take the air cleaner off and make sure that's all wide open just in case there is a problem. That way I can shut it down quickly with a rag in case things go sideways. we gotta adjust the idle on that. That sounded good, puppy dog. Yay. Love it when they don't run away on you. Alright, let's get this idle scooted up so this thing will run on its own. Alright, let's fire this thing up one more time real quick. I think I've got my idle adjusted. The stupid camera didn't record the last bit of running, but got great oil pressure. Man, that thing sounds great. Good oil pressure, we're 55, 60. And I've got the idle set right at about 830, 850, I think. And so we are set to put this thing in the boat. I'm going to put the belts back on, get it all set up to go. And she's ready to install. I'm sorry you guys weren't able to see the actual adjustments while it was running and stuff. It sounded really great. The clanging that you're hearing in the video is just the chain in the dog ears on top of the engine. The engine's not actually making any sort of clanging or pinging noises. I heard that when I was rewatching the video and it kind of scared me, and then I realized it was just the chain. So we're good there. So we're going to get all the toys put away, get this thing secured on a different workbench out of my way, because now she's ready to be loaded on a boat. Well, guys, she runs. Didn't throw a rod. This is always the most nerve-wracking part about rebuilding these engines. I always worry that, I missed some critical detail. I always take my time and it always turns out fine, but I can't lie, it's still in the back of my mind. There's a couple, finishing details on this. I'll, touch it up with some paint. Make sure it's like absolutely perfect before it walks out the door. Then once it's installed, we can actually load this thing up and, put some work into it and make sure things get seated. We'll change oil, all the usual stuff for break-in. This engine sounds a whole ton better than it did, you know, before the rebuild. It's amazing. Even though it had good compression and other things like that, it was a lot noisier, which is kind of surprising. I wasn't expecting that with this rebuild, but it sounds really great. It fires off super easily, and I'm really pleased with it, and I think my customer will be too. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will plan on seeing you guys in the next video.